Most men try harder, talk more, give more, chase more, yet somehow they end up being the ones ignored. But what if the real power lies in doing less, feeling less desperate, and becoming someone who doesn't need to chase at all? Emotional control is often misunderstood. People think it means suppressing feelings, becoming cold, or acting indifferent, but that's not what it truly is. Real emotional control is the ability to feel everything deeply, yet choose how you respond instead of reacting impulsively. And in the world of attraction, this distinction changes everything. Most men lose their edge the moment they let emotions dictate their behavior. They get too excited too quickly, too affected by small changes, too reactive when things don't go their way. One delayed reply can ruin their mood. One slight shift in attention can trigger overthinking. And without realizing it, they start seeking reassurance instead of creating attraction. But emotional control flips this dynamic. When you remain steady regardless of external situations, you create a sense of calm strength that's rare. You're not easily shaken, not easily triggered, and not easily influenced. This stability becomes magnetic because it signals something deeper: confidence, maturity, and inner security. When a woman sees that you're not reacting to every little thing, she starts to feel your presence differently. Your calmness becomes intriguing. She begins to wonder what's going on beneath the surface. Because unlike others who are predictable and emotionally transparent, you don't give everything away instantly. And that mystery builds curiosity. There's also a sense of safety in emotional control. When your emotions are stable, people feel like they can trust your energy. They know you won't explode in anger, collapse in insecurity, or become overly dependent. You become someone who can handle situations without losing composure. And that kind of grounded presence naturally draws people in. At the same time, emotional control prevents you from overinvesting too early. Instead of getting carried away by attraction, you stay balanced. You enjoy the moment, but you don't let it consume you. This creates space for the other person to come toward you instead of you constantly moving toward them. And attraction grows best in that space. It also protects your self-respect. When you're in control of your emotions, you don't tolerate behavior that disrespects you, but you also don't create unnecessary drama. You simply adjust your actions. You pull back your attention. You observe rather than react. This quiet confidence shows that you value yourself, and people naturally mirror that value. Another powerful aspect is how it shifts the energy of interactions. Instead of trying to impress or win someone over, you become present and observant. You listen more, speak with intention, and move with awareness. This makes your actions feel deliberate rather than desperate, and that difference is felt instantly. Emotional expression, when uncontrolled, often reveals neediness. It shows that your emotional state depends on someone else's behavior. But emotional control shows independence. It shows that you are complete within yourself. And when someone senses that you don't need them, but still choose to engage, that's when attraction becomes genuine. In the end, emotional control isn't about hiding who you are. It's about mastering yourself. It's about creating a calm, centered presence that doesn't chase validation or react to every situation. And in a world where most people are driven by impulse, that kind of control doesn't just stand out, it pulls people in without effort. Silence is one of the most underestimated forms of power. Most people are uncomfortable with it. They rush to fill every pause with words, explanations, or reactions because silence feels awkward, uncertain, even threatening. But what they don't realize is that in that very space, where nothing is being said, something much deeper is happening. When you're always talking, always explaining, always revealing your thoughts, there's nothing left to discover. You become predictable, easy to read. And while that might feel safe, it quietly removes the sense of intrigue that fuels attraction. Mystery disappears when everything is known too quickly. Silence, on the other hand, creates a gap, and that gap invites curiosity. When you don't immediately respond, when you don't rush to explain yourself, when you allow moments to breathe, people begin to wonder. They start asking questions in their own mind. What is he thinking? Why didn't he react? What does that mean? And just like that, their attention shifts toward you without you trying to pull it. There's also a quiet confidence in silence. It signals that you don't feel the need to prove yourself or seek constant validation. You're comfortable with who you are, and you're not desperate for attention. This alone sets you apart because most people speak not to express, but to be noticed. When you remove that need, your presence becomes stronger, even without words. Silence also makes your words more valuable. When you speak less, people listen more. Your words carry weight because they're not given away carelessly. Instead of talking just to fill space, you speak with intention. And that shift changes how people perceive you. You're no longer just another voice, you become someone worth paying attention to. Another powerful aspect of silence is how it reveals others. When you're not constantly leading the conversation, people begin to open up more. They fill the silence with their own thoughts, emotions, and stories. You start to see who they really are without forcing anything. And in that position, you gain understanding while maintaining your own mystery. Silence also helps you avoid unnecessary emotional reactions. Not every situation needs an immediate response. Not every comment deserves your energy. By choosing silence, you give yourself time to observe, to process, and to respond only when it truly matters. This creates a sense of control that others can feel, even if they can't explain it. In attraction, this becomes incredibly powerful. When you're not constantly available, not always reacting, not always explaining your every move, you create space for the other person to think about you, to miss your presence, to wonder what you're doing. And that mental engagement is what deepens interest over time. It's important to understand that silence isn't about ignoring or playing games. It's about restraint. It's about knowing that you don't have to say everything, react to everything, or reveal everything. You choose when to speak and when to stay quiet, and that choice gives you control over your energy. In a world where everyone is trying to be heard, the one who masters silence becomes unforgettable. Because while others are chasing attention, you're creating curiosity, and curiosity is the beginning of attraction that grows on its own. Detachment is often mistaken for coldness, but in reality, it's one of the most powerful forms of emotional strength. It doesn't mean you don't care. It means you're not controlled by how much you care. And that subtle difference is what changes how people see you. Most people attach too quickly. They invest emotionally before anything real has been built. They start prioritizing someone they barely know, adjusting their behavior to avoid losing them, and slowly placing that person at the center of their mood. The moment this happens, their value begins to drop, not because they're not worthy, but because they've made their attention too easy to obtain. Detachment reverses this completely. When you're detached, you still enjoy someone's presence, but you don't depend on it. Your happiness, your focus, your energy, they all remain grounded within you. You're not constantly checking your phone, waiting for a reply, or overanalyzing every interaction. And that independence creates a powerful shift in how others perceive you. Value is often linked to scarcity. The more available something is, the less people feel the need to pursue it. But when something feels slightly out of reach, not impossible, just not guaranteed, it becomes more desirable. Detachment naturally creates this effect. When people sense that your attention isn't easily secured, they begin to invest more effort to gain it. There's also a sense of emotional stability that comes with detachment. You're not riding emotional highs and lows based on someone else's behavior. If they're present, you enjoy it. If they pull away, you remain composed. This consistency makes you feel grounded and reliable, yet still intriguing. Because while your presence is calm, it's not something they can fully control. Detachment also protects you from overgiving. When you're too attached, you tend to give more than what's being reciprocated, more time, more attention, more emotional energy. But when you're detached, you naturally match the other person's effort. You don't chase, you don't overextend, and you don't try to force a connection. This balance keeps your value intact. Another important aspect is how detachment changes your decisions. Instead of acting out of fear, fear of losing someone, fear of being alone, fear of not being enough, you act from self-respect. You choose what aligns with you, not what keeps someone else around. And that authenticity is felt. People can sense when someone is acting from strength rather than need. In attraction, this becomes incredibly powerful. When a woman realizes that you're not easily influenced, not easily attached, and not easily controlled, she begins to see you differently. You're no longer just someone seeking attention, you become someone whose attention must be earned. And that shift alone can change the entire dynamic. Detachment also creates space. Space for the other person to think about you, to miss you, to wonder about you. When you're always there, always available, there's no room for those feelings to grow. But when you step back slightly, not out of strategy, but out of genuine self-containment, you allow attraction to develop naturally. At its core, detachment is about knowing that you are complete on your own. You don't need someone to validate your worth or complete your life. You welcome connection, but you don't depend on it. And when someone feels that energy, they don't see distance, they see value. Because the less you need to hold on, the more others feel the pull to come closer. Self-respect is the foundation of how the world responds to you. It's not something you announce or demand, it's something you demonstrate through your behavior, your boundaries, and the way you carry yourself. People don't decide your value on their own. They take cues from how you treat yourself. And once that pattern is set, it becomes the standard they follow. Most people think respect comes from what you say, but it actually comes from what you tolerate. The moment you allow disrespect, inconsistency, or low effort without consequence, you quietly communicate that it's acceptable, not through words, but through your actions. And over time, people adjust their behavior to match what you're willing to accept. Self-respect changes that dynamic completely. When you respect yourself, you don't chase approval. You don't overextend to keep someone interested. You don't ignore red flags just to maintain a connection. Instead, you move with a quiet certainty. You know what you bring, and you're not willing to compromise that for temporary attention. This doesn't mean you become rigid or difficult. It means you become clear. Clear about your values, your time, and your energy. You don't give endlessly without receiving. You don't stay where you're not appreciated. And most importantly, you don't try to convince someone to see your worth. Because deep down, you already see it. One of the strongest expressions of self-respect is the ability to walk away, not in anger, not in ego, but in calm understanding. When something doesn't align with you, you don't fight to fix it at any cost. You step back, you remove your presence, and that absence often speaks louder than any argument ever could. It shows that your standards are real, not just words. Self-respect also shapes your communication. You don't beg for attention or clarity. You ask once, and you observe the response. If the effort isn't there, you don't chase it, you adjust your investment. This creates a balanced dynamic where both sides contribute, rather than one person constantly trying to hold everything together. There's also a certain energy that comes with self-respect. It's calm, grounded, and unbothered. You're not easily shaken by someone's mood or behavior because your sense of self isn't tied to their actions. This stability makes you feel solid, and people naturally respond to that. They take you more seriously not because you demand it, but because your presence commands it. In attraction, self-respect is essential. When a woman sees that you value yourself, she understands that your attention isn't cheap. It's not given to just anyone, it's given selectively. And that selectiveness increases your perceived value. Because what's earned is always appreciated more than what's freely given without thought. It also prevents you from losing yourself in the process of trying to gain someone else. You don't change who you are to fit expectations. You don't lower your standards to avoid being alone. You remain aligned with yourself, regardless of the outcome. And that authenticity creates a deeper kind of attraction, one based on respect, not just emotion. At the end of the day, self-respect is a silent contract between you and the world. It says, this is how I treat myself, and this is how I expect to be treated. And whether people realize it or not, they follow that lead. Purpose is one of the most quietly powerful traits a man can have. It doesn't announce itself, it doesn't beg for attention, and it doesn't rely on external validation, yet it naturally draws people in. When you have a clear sense of direction, something you're building, chasing, or becoming, your entire presence shifts. You move differently, you think differently, and most importantly, you stop centering your life around being liked. Most men struggle with attraction because they make it their primary focus. Their time, energy, and attention revolve around impressing, texting, chasing, and seeking approval. And without realizing it, they lose something essential, their edge. Because when your life revolves around others, you become predictable and overly available. There's no depth, no mission, no sense of something greater pulling you forward. Purpose changes that instantly. When you're focused on something meaningful, your work, your growth, your vision, you don't have time to overanalyze every interaction or chase every opportunity. Your attention is already invested somewhere valuable. And that alone creates a powerful shift. Instead of seeking attention, you become someone whose attention is limited. That limitation is what creates attraction. When a woman sees that your life doesn't revolve around her, but you still choose to include her in it, it feels different. It feels real. Because now, your attention isn't coming from boredom or need, it's coming from choice. And being chosen always feels more meaningful than being chased. Purpose also builds discipline. You become more intentional with your time, your habits, and your decisions. You're not easily distracted, not easily pulled off track. This creates a sense of stability and direction that others can feel. It shows that you're not just drifting through life, you're moving towards something. And people are naturally drawn to those who know where they're going. There's also a certain confidence that comes from purpose, but it's not loud or forced. It's quiet, grounded. You don't need to prove yourself because your actions already speak for you. You're not trying to impress, you're focused on progressing. And that mindset removes the pressure from interactions. You're not there to win someone over. You're simply being yourself while continuing your path. Another powerful aspect is that purpose makes you less reactive. When your life has meaning beyond temporary emotions, you don't get thrown off by small things. Delayed replies, mixed signals, or shifting attention don't affect you the same way, because your world doesn't revolve around those moments. You stay centered, focused, and unaffected, and that emotional independence is incredibly attractive. Purpose also creates mystery without effort. You're not always available, not always online, not always responding instantly. Not because you're playing games, but because you're genuinely engaged in your own life. This naturally creates curiosity. People start to wonder what you're doing, what drives you, what occupies your time. And that curiosity builds interest without you trying to create it. Most importantly, purpose protects your self-worth. When you're building something meaningful, you don't rely on others to define your value. You already feel a sense of progress, direction, and fulfillment. So when you connect with someone, it's not from a place of emptiness, it's from a place of completeness. You're not looking for someone to fill a gap, you're offering them a place in a life that already has meaning. And that's what makes purpose magnetic. It shifts your energy from chasing to attracting, from needing to choosing, from proving to becoming. Without saying a word, without making an effort to impress, you become someone people naturally want to be around because you're already aligned with something bigger than attention. There's a quiet kind of power that most people overlook. It doesn't shout, it doesn't beg for attention, and it doesn't try to impress. Yet, it pulls people in effortlessly. This is the essence of Stoic behavior, calm, grounded, and unshaken. When a man embodies this energy, he stops chasing validation and starts attracting genuine interest. And without realizing it, women begin to notice him, think about him, and eventually chase him. Most men believe attraction is built through effort, through constant messaging, over-explaining, and trying to prove their worth. But the truth is, the more you try to convince someone of your value, the less valuable you appear. Stoic behavior flips this entirely. A Stoic man doesn't react impulsively. When something goes wrong, he doesn't panic. When someone pulls away, he doesn't chase. This emotional control creates a sense of stability that's rare, and rarity is attractive. When a woman sees that you're not easily shaken, she begins to feel something different around you, something calm, something safe, but also something intriguing. Then there's silence. Most people are uncomfortable with it. They rush to fill every gap with words, jokes, or explanations. But a Stoic man understands that silence is not emptiness, it's power. When you speak less, your words carry more weight. When you don't reveal everything, you become a mystery people want to solve. And curiosity is often the beginning of attraction. Another behavior that changes everything is detachment. Not coldness, not indifference, but a quiet understanding that you don't need anyone to complete you. You enjoy someone's presence, but your happiness doesn't depend on it. This creates a subtle tension, because when someone realizes they can't control your emotions or predict your reactions, they start investing more energy into understanding you. Self-respect is another cornerstone. A Stoic man doesn't tolerate disrespect, but he also doesn't create drama around it. He simply withdraws his attention. No arguments, no begging, no emotional outbursts, just distance. And that distance speaks louder than any words ever could. It forces others to reflect, to question, and often to come back with more effort. Consistency also plays a role, not in being predictable, but in being grounded. Your mood doesn't swing wildly based on external events. You remain centered. This makes people feel like they can trust your presence. And trust builds attraction in a way that surface-level charm never can. Then there's purpose. A Stoic man is focused on something bigger than attention. He has goals, direction, and discipline. His time is valuable, not because he says it is, but because he treats it that way. When a woman sees that she's not the center of your world, but she can be a part of it, that's when attraction deepens. Because now, she's not just being given attention, she's earning a place in your life. Patience is another quiet weapon. Most people rush everything: conversations, relationships, emotions. But when you move with patience, you signal confidence. You're not afraid of losing opportunities because you trust that what's meant for you will come. And that calm patience makes others slow down and match your pace. Another powerful behavior is not seeking validation. When you stop looking for approval, you naturally become more authentic. You say what you mean, you stand by your actions, and you don't adjust yourself just to be liked. Ironically, this is what makes people like you more. Control over desire is also key. Attraction is often lost when a man becomes too eager, too available, too predictable. A Stoic man feels desire, but he doesn't let it control his behavior. He doesn't rush to reply instantly. He doesn't drop everything for attention, and he doesn't overinvest too early. This creates space, and in that space, attraction grows. Finally, there's the ability to walk away, not as a tactic, but as a principle. When you know your worth, you don't stay where you're not valued. And that willingness to leave sends a powerful message. You are not afraid to lose what doesn't respect you. And strangely enough, that's what makes people afraid of losing you. When you embody these behaviors, you don't need tricks or manipulation. You don't need to chase, because your presence alone starts doing the work for you.